This video is brought to you by Dunk Dunk, the chaotic multiplayer action basketball arcade party game where your goal is to dunk with and or on your friends. Play solo, co-op, or with up to 16 pals in this hectic dunkathon, because there's nothing in the rules about catching too much air, bud. Familiar platforming controls makes it easy to pick up and play, but the unique stretchy arm mechanic adds a layer of depth and mastery to this slam dunk. Earnestly. Customize your dunker to your heart's content as you battle across 8 unique levels with their own special features, including haunted houses, dino-themed arenas, and marooned space stations. Ooh, a real space jam. Dunk Dunk is a party game so nice they named it twice. Head on over to the Steam page to wishlist it today and make sure to lace up those kicks. You got some dunking to do.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Windbreakers podcast. I'm Yahtzee Crowshaw. I'm joined by Marty Slaver and by Jamate as well.
Hey up.
And this week on the Windbreakers, we're talking about, are realistic graphics important to video games still? Short answer, no. But I'll tell you why I wanted to talk about it, is because just before my Assassin's Creed Shadows review came out, I was getting paranoid. Because I was looking at social media posts about Assassin's Creed Shadows, and it seemed like everyone liked the game. Everyone was loving it. I was saying, oh, Ubisoft's back in action. Of course, this was on Blue Sky, where everyone's supposed to be positive all the time. But I also noticed that all the positivity posts surrounding it were focusing exclusively on how the game looks. People were posting their screenshots and saying, oh, look at this, it's like Ghost of Tsushima, but a different thing. And when my review came out, I was slightly worried by the response, in case I was out on a limb. But then all the response was like, yeah, we all agree. It's standard Ubisoft sandbox bollockry. The same shit warmed over as always.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be fair, people usually agree with your reviews.
Well, that's true, but I also made a point of looking at Reddit, and they were in agreement as well.
Yeah.
So, is it me, or is there a certain cognitive dissonance at work with the video game and its responses?
So, I guess from the start is sort of, what are we talking about when we talk about good graphics in 2025, right? Like, we're not talking, people are saying, well, I want a game with like a strong art style, but I think we're kind of referring more to like that cutting edge, pushing the boundaries of what modern technology can do. Like, oh, this is the reason I bought this new graphics card, or I bought this console was so that it could run blank.
Fucking HD textures, fucking billions of particles, fucking realistically shitting horses.
HD textures, that was 20 years ago.
Yes. I said that just to annoy you.
Sorry, that was a gut punch to the game dev.
So yeah, I think there's a slight difference between something that has a strong style to it and something that is this like quote unquote, oh, this is realistic. This is what blank would actually look like and react.
I noticed the chat's already been popping off on this one, and much of the sentiment is as one would expect. Said, of course, ultra-realistic graphics aren't important, especially not when it means, games now routinely cost way too much money to make, take too much time to make, and take up like 200 gig on the hard drive because of all the fancy 4K textures it's using.
Western dev was here.
Yeah.
The problem is people say it doesn't matter, and then a trailer for a game comes out and it's immediately picked apart like with a fine-tooth comb, and oh, the water textures and shadows aren't as good as the water textures in Black Flag, or its draw distance isn't as much as Xenoblade Chronicles X, or taking the puddle gate, or the weird looking fucking grunt dude from Halo Infinite. So people say they don't matter, but I feel like they do matter to people.
I'm going to sound like a dick here.
Okay.
I think it's because the general audience is like game dev terminology illiterate, so they don't have the vocabulary to describe like what they like or don't like about a thing. So when trailers come out, all they can say is this doesn't look as good as this, or this is this. Like general consumers don't have that vocabulary. Like most people can't say why they like a thing, right?
But is it the consumers doing that, or is this whole scrutiny of graphics thing entirely a confection developed by the media? Because this is just how you get clicks on YouTube, isn't it? You're like doing like a side-by-side showcase video of Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 5, showing how somehow everything was much more realistic in 2.
Yeah. It's an easy thing to latch onto, right?
To people's defense, when a trailer comes out for a game that isn't available yet, one of the few things you can comment on are how it looks.
Oh, exactly.
Right? Like you can't, if you're commenting on how a game plays before you've played it, you're kind of a.
Well, this is why life was much better when we had playable demos of everything and not fucking trailers.
Yeah, I kind of want to defend good graphics for a little bit, because I think I am still kind of a sucker for, it can't be the only thing a game has, but sometimes I want to wander around a world that looks really fucking pretty. And Assassin's Creed Shadows, if you remove everything else from it, is a world that looks really fucking pretty. You know, Death Stranding is a world that looks really fucking pretty and conveys that kind of sense of virtual tourism. Again, all mechanics aside. So I think completely poo-pooing the visuals of a game, it's kind of like, what am I in? Like, what am I in the mood for? Like, what do I want at this given moment?
Depends on the game and the genre.
The value of ultra-realistic graphics is immersion. If you want to create an immersive experience like Red Dead Redemption 2, every extra ounce of realism adds to that. The problem is
for that gives it an expiry date.
Yeah, because there's nothing ages faster than ultra-realistic graphics. Just look at something like Oblivion these days. People thought that was like the cutting edge of realistic graphics when it came out. Look at it now.
Yeah.
And laugh.
But I will say, like, those stuff like Red Dead, it almost feels like since 2017 or so, like the visuals have kind of plateaued and things have gotten better, but like Horizon, Death Stranding, Red Dead, like these games still kind of look incredible, and we just don't see that same kind of generational leap that we used. The fact that they're already talking about a PlayStation 6 and a next Xbox are like, we haven't have we really like run these things to the limit?
No, things have certainly plateaued. I mean, I think if you compare them side by side, you can see the difference. I've been replaying Assassin's Creed Black Flag on my Switch lately. And that's, I mean, I can remember that looking like top of the range stuff at the time I first played it, and now it's certainly showing its age. The thing is, though, you say it's great to see like ultra fancy, pretty environments in Assassin's Creed Shadows, but for me, that just sort of bounces off me now. Because all the time I was playing Assassin's Creed Shadows, it all just felt like so much white noise. I'd be riding through the countryside, just identical bushes streaking past. And, I'm sure if I took the moment to examine the bushes, there was probably a lot of detail that went into them. But I was just sort of zoning out. I'm just like, let's just focus on this GUI element that's showing me exactly what direction to go in. It's often the case with the Ubisoft sandboxes. You'll notice in like trailers and stuff, they take off all the GUI elements because when you're actually playing the game, all you're looking at is the fucking GUI elements. Everything else is just so much grey fog.
And those areas are designed to be just like trotted through on a horse. They're not necessarily like, I'm sure even in a game as pretty as Assassin's Creed Shadows, or like we were talking about Ghost of Tsushima, a game that I've played recently, that I was jaw dropped at how unbelievably gorgeous that game was, especially with its lighting. If you stop and look at some of the environments instead of just like running through them on your horse, you start seeing repeated assets and you start seeing, some of the textures mismatching and stuff. But that's because they're not meant to be scrutinized that heavily. But I agree with you, Arts. There's a bit to the game's detriment in a way, because you are just like barreling past all of this environment art.
The comparison between Shadows and Tsushima for me is how it looks at night, because in Shadows, when it's dark, everything's murky and hard to make out. I did a couple of moments where I was like fighting a boss fight inside a building at night, and I could barely fucking see. Everything's lit by candles, but the candles keep getting knocked over because realistic physics. I couldn't see where the fucking dudes were, and the camera was kept running into walls and like zooming in too far. And then you look at the Tsushima. You look at Ghost of Tsushima, which very deliberately has a sort of cinematic day for night filter when it's nighttime, so everything's just entirely visible, just sort of blue, and it's a million times better. And I think that gets us to the fact that stylization is infinitely better than ultra realistic, ultra fancy graphics.
Even from a design point, I'm going to misquote this, and I can't attribute it to the correct person. So, chat, please help me out here once I misquote this. There was someone on a film production was shooting a light at the scene, and one of the grips came over and was like, "Why is this light here? What is it motivated by? What's creating this light? Like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not realistic. Where's that light coming from?" And their response was the same place as the music, right? It's not there realistically in the scene. It's there to do something artistically. And from a design perspective, that's the same. We use non-diegetic light all the time in game design to, light the scene up so you can see, right? Uniform lighting across a scene is extremely common, but it's not realistic. It's there to aid your gameplay experience and your through play, right? And that's why I want to get away from realism in a lot of ways, right? Lit by candles is cool, but you can't see shit.
The thing that annoys me about excessive detail, particularly in like ultra realistic graphics, is that it's detrimental to the design of the game, because it's what's caused basically every game now to have fucking eagle vision and see-through walls vision, because it's impossible to differentiate what's important to gameplay from everything that's just randomly thrown in for flavor. I mean, if you look at games like Serious Sam, where you can tell what's important because it's floating off the ground 3 feet and spinning, and then we compare it to like finding weapons in something like Metro Exodus, where everything's just like a black object on a shelf alongside a million other black objects. So everything's got to have GUI elements floating over it. That's the other thing that's training us only to look for GUI elements and not to actually examine the scenery.
I think we talked about it a few years ago, Jay, and you might have even made an early design delve about like when Horizon Forbidden West came out. Like we were talking about how it's like incredibly hard. Like the game is like gorgeous, but it's incredibly hard to like know what am I supposed to interact with here. Like you need a kind of like a level of abstraction in order to tell us like what objects am I supposed to interact with here. Like where are the boundaries here?
It was a video I made a while ago. I think we might have ported it over to Second Wind. Like games are so pretty, it's ruining my job as like a level designer. Because I'm working on a project where I'm strictly just doing level design. I'm not doing like the environment art and stuff like that. And I would design a level to work a certain way and perform a certain way, guide the player's eye. And then the incredible environment artist would come in and make it obscenely pretty, but so pretty that it drew the player's eye away from what we wanted them to look at, which is paths of progression and items and stuff like that. So there's like lots of dialogue you have to have between level designers and environment artists. But like similar to what Yahtzee was saying about items, I'm having that. I won't speak too much to it, but in the project, my personal project I'm working on, I'm having that exact issue of like a lot of the game is based on like players finding items. How do you signify that in a world that you're trying to make pretty, but without having them just float and spin or, have context GUI elements on them? It's really tough. It's a balancing act for sure.
Well, a game I've been playing very recently is Atomfall, which I'll be doing a review of pretty soon. And one of the interesting things about that game is that it has no objective markers, not much on-screen GUI at all.
I love that.
And I'd say the game does surprisingly well out of it. Because the game will go, you have to find this thing that the bandits have stolen, they're keeping it in their camp. And then you just have to go around their camp, look for areas that look important. And more often than not, if you just go to what looks like an important place and look in like what look like important boxes, you find the thing you're looking for. And it's amazing that you can actually still do this with...
Or like via context, right? Like, if you're after the science stuff, it will probably be in the tent with all the fucking beakers in it, mate.
Is it also... I haven't played Atomfall yet. Is it one of those games where you can pick up anything, or is it like relatively conservative when it comes to what you can interact with. So you're
No,
not
it's
just
not
like,
a-
oh, I can every can or every slice of bread I can pick up, that kind of thing.
No, not really. It's you're mainly just looting stuff, I guess.
Hmm.
Like, picking things from a list of stuff you found on a body.
Yeah.
But it's considering that every game seems to need eagle vision. Now, it's surprised how well the game does without needing any of it and still having somewhat realistic, top of the range looking graphics. And
Yeah,
it all
that's one
really
of those.
just comes down to design, I think. Just like you go around saying, "Oh, this looks like an important room. This looks like the kind of place where it would make sense to find the thing I'm looking for, and then find it." Who'd have thought
Yeah.
that would be a good way to design a game?
Yeah.
Yeah, it can't be stated how good of a feeling that is to for a game to reward your curiosity or your hunches like that. Because there's also, it's really kind of demoralizing to constantly try to be like, oh, there's probably something behind here, or ooh, up here if I climb this thing, and then have it be nothing. Like I don't always need constant gratification when it comes to those things, but it's nice when it feels like, oh, the developer was thinking the same way I'm thinking, and had kind of the same train of thought.
Connecting those dots.
Yeah. At the same time, I mean, when we talk about style, the and given that this week on Wednesday we're going to see the full reveal of the Switch 2, Nintendo has been that interesting company that they haven't had the strongest hardware since the GameCube. And the GameCube, it did some things better than Xbox and PS2, but that was the last time at least it kind of felt like it was nearish the top of the line. Whereas
they very deliberately chose not to chase best graphics when the Wii came out, because the Wii was doing its own thing.
Yeah, they kind of opted out of that arms race. But at the same time, their sense of style and so many of their first person things and that strong aesthetic and their just high quality filter gives us stuff like Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, and then even like some of their like lower tier stuff like Luigi's Mansion 3 and Pikmin 4 are like some of the best looking games of this generation, and it's not because the hardware is that powerful; it's because of that strong aesthetic.
No, it's stylized. That's what.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the last time I played a game and I just went, "Wow, that looks really impressive."
Yeah, I don't get that too much in. I think Death Stranding might have been my last one. And that was again one of those moments that it was partly the visuals, but partly like Kojima taking control of a camera at a certain point, knowing that when you crest this ridge, the camera's going to zoom out and some low roar song or a Church's song is going to play at this moment, and it's kind of like the filmic nature of Kojima comes through to really hit that.
I remember thinking it when I played Ghost of Tsushima, but again, it wasn't because of top of the range graphics. It was because of the color choice, mainly.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. I've had that really recently. My next video is half of it is on Ghost of Tsushima. Just the lighting and the, like you were saying, Yahtzee, I can't speak too much to the color, being colorblind, but I agree. My jaw was like on the floor. I was like, this is stunning, like absolutely stunning, and I'm really looking forward to see what they can do with their the next game.
Yeah, it's also like FromSoft is an interesting company because I don't feel like even like an Elden Ring, I don't feel like is the quote unquote the best graphics, but they have like a really amazing sense of kind of color and creating a snapshot. There's like that moment where there's the moment where after you beat Godric the Grafted and you first see the Hogwarts and the irony of the lakes, and like that is specifically framed to give you that moment of like awe and adventure that even the beginning of Breath of the Wild has, and that's something that's less technical power and more like an artist's vision at this very moment.
No, I remember stepping out into the open world for the first time in Elden Ring and looking out at the scenery. It felt like looking at the between levels screen in Doom, where there's a map and all the areas you can go to are laid out, and you just go, "Ooh, here's all the places I'm going to go."
Yeah,
just laid out, splaying out in front of you.
The FromSoft, I've made many videos about it. FromSoft are fucking so good at framing, and like you walk out the birth canal, you come out into the area and you see everything you need to see, relevant information. And Elden Ring was when their chains, they took the training weights off, And they're like, right, instead of just framing this one level so you know where to go, we're going to do the map, right? You could probably play Elden Ring without a map, I think, but it would be a very different experience.
It does enough of the, you could see, here's the Limgrave, or here's like the castle, or here's where Caelid starts. So, that's again something Breath of the Wild did really well. But you also don't, I still get kind of those moments of awe even in indie games that aren't pushing hardware. I finished Wanderstop over the weekend, and it does a thing where every time you can make yourself a cup of tea and sit down on a bench, and you'll drink that tea, and depending on the flavor, the main character will kind of tell a different anecdote, kind of like reminisce about a different point in their life. And I would purposely, there's a bunch of benches all over the Grove, and I would purposely find a different bench every time, because as the character reminisced about that, the camera kind of swept in a way and framed the back of you sitting on a bench to the Grove in like a really pretty way. And I would constantly look for different benches every cup of tea to see like, what is my favorite view in this place? And again, there's nothing, I was playing it on my Steam Deck. It's not like, it's not, pushing my graphics card or anything, but
I was kind of more impressed. I was kind of more impressed playing something like Return of the Obra Dinn, and seeing how effectively Lucas Pope was able to make faces recognizable using only two colors in a 3D environment.
Yeah.
And the dithering and stuff. I'm going down my list of recent reviews. Yeah.
I mean, you won this week. There's, I think without spoiling anything, I don't know if this is more like visuals or how it used the idea of the split screen, but the final act of Split Fiction, I thought did some.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's pretty neat. Playing with the concept of the two disparate halves of the screen and how they actually speak to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the split screening there. It was, again, stylization. Looking down my list. Yeah, I'd say the last game that I reviewed that made me go, wow, I'm impressed by the visuals, was Astrobot.
Yeah.
And awesome. I think, specifically, I'm thinking of a bit where you plant a seed and it turns into a tree. And the tree is just fucking massive, and it's got a face, and it sings to you. Yeah, I think a lot of that was sound design more than the visuals.
I'm just looking at it now. That was a real pretty game.
Yeah.
Also, just from a technical standpoint, I think we're getting to the point where, like you said, we're plateauing in a lot of the visual representations, but using the hardware to get to a point where we have so many physics simulations and so many the amount of polygons on screen, right, is what I think is blowing me away. That was what I think is when you turn into the big robot in Astrobot and you spin and cut all the bamboo or something like that. Very simple thing, but I was like, wow, this is awesome, right? Yeah. Very different from what we were getting back in 2005, right?
Yeah, I almost feel like there's small things like that can impact me more than the Mario 64 moment of holy shit, everything feels different now. The Last of Us Part 2 had a couple puzzles where you had to grab a rope or a cord and kind of swing it around and throw it over a fence. And the fact that it even resembled how a real rope would act was this is something that I haven't really seen before in games. Because when you do certain puzzles in certain games, did Half-Life have puzzles where you had to plug in a cord? Half-Life 2, I think. Puzzles where you had to power a machine by plugging in a cord. The cord always kind of looked a little wonky. And granted, probably at the time it looked amazing, but 20 years on, it's kind of a little wonky. Whereas in The Last of Us 2, it was that's a real ass cord.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw a rope in games at all. It was opposing force. And it looked really janky. It was like a skeleton rope with a bunch of stiff.
You can see the bones
rods,
in it, right?
Yeah, connected to each other.
That's it's the realism.
It's funny every time
ropes.
It's funny to think about the first thing that leaps to your mind when you bring up a specific game. The one moment from that game that is just the first thing that leaps right back into your consciousness when you think of it. And when you mention The Last of Us 2, to this day, the first thing that springs to mind is the soulful acoustic rendition of Take On Me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In a good way? You didn't roll your eyes at that?
Actually I did.
But in an endearing way?
I guess. At least it wasn't everyone being miserable and murdering each other the whole time. It just makes me laugh to hear soulful acoustic versions of what were originally sort of cheesy 80s pop songs.
Yeah,
That's cool.
but in that world, that's almost like around the time Culture ended, and so like you didn't get, because I guess Last of Us 2 has that song, and then that one Pearl
Yeah.
Jam song
I'm
that
j-
that Joel
I
sings.
I once heard on the radio like a soulful, slow acoustic version of Footloose. Get on Footloose, get on your Sunday. And that is
Yeah.
one song that should never be sung in a
That is
soulful,
no.
Yeah,
slow
Yeah.
acoustic version.
Yeah, it's funny. That's become such a trope in like movie trailers and stuff. Is like, oh, let's take the. I don't know if it started with like the slow Mad World version of Mad World that was in like Donnie Darko, and there was like a Gears of War trailer that it was in. But it's like,
Yeah.
let's take any '80s song and slow it down and make it mournful, and we can
Yeah.
create an atmosphere there, which is
Yeah.
That was always a slow, mournful song, wasn't it?
yeah. And then this was like, how do we slow it down even more?
Yeah.
What about so we're talking about quote unquote good graphics. Do we think quote unquote bad graphics can also be like purposefully bad? Your Cruelty Squads, I feel like a lot of games on Yahtzee tries
Yes, there
lately
certainly
have
is.
had bad graphics.
There's certainly a sort of a movement there, isn't there? Sort of a
Yeah.
post-punk attitude to graphics. That's sort of a deliberate defiance of the quest for ultimate prettiness. Cruelty Squad being a great example of that. Roguelite Deck Builder, I suspect, is the game you might be thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which apparently
it's
people
fun.
said they finished that game and it just ends. You just like leave
Yeah.
the deck.
I finished it myself. Well, the joke is that the dude behind the desk is the one who leaves, not you. But it's still the end. It's still the end of the game.
That's great.
Silly.
I don't know how I feel about it. If it serves the narrative or the gameplay, I'm there for it. If it's just ugly because like that's how it's trying to stand out, I'm like, it's just ugly, right? Like this, it looks different. That's cool. I like that, but
I think
it still hurts
ugly,
my eyes to look at.
It's ugly, but it's also striking, and in many ways, sort of functional.
Yeah,
Like Cruelty Squad was striking.
Mm.
I wouldn't say how functional I'd say it was, but more so than having to turn on Eagle Vision to tell where the fuck everything is.
I mean, it's also like like a quick snippet like that is the quickest way for me to clock a game in a sea of a million Steam games that come out every week. Like if you can see something like White Knuckle or that you just get a glimpse of and you're like, ooh, something about that looks neat. Like that's what you can clock it in like a 3-second GIF.
That's what I said when I was complaining about remakes in my emblematic about what can be lost in remakes. Resident Evil 4, Silent Hill 2, Resident Evil 2, all in their original forms, you could tell them apart from a single screenshot. But with their remakes, they all look exactly the same. Floppy-haired dude with the camera staring at their bum in an ultra-realistic environment. And I feel like something is lost.
Yeah.
And that's just become the... Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that's kind of become now the de facto look for AAA horror games, whether it's Silent Hill or the Dead Space remake or Callisto Protocol or even Alone in the Dark last year. Like, they're kind of just taking, which I guess is kind of just the Resi 4 look, but the zhushed up Resi 4 look and applying it to everything.
It's the same thing in like the indie space with like game design has become so accessible, which is always a good thing, right? What I'm about to say is not a negative thing. Game design is so accessible through like the amount of engines you have access to, and then within that the amount of paid or free assets and like systems you can purchase or tutorials you can follow. But the problem with that is that games that are made by smaller teams that are trying to make something quickly are starting to look exactly the same, right? Like
I know what you mean. I really wish there'd be more focus on like concentrating on creating a visual theme. Because I'm thinking of Schedule 1 that we play. Another thing we played on Yahtzee Tries recently. Feels like a lot of indie games these days are just flat Unity default textures and style, like ultra stylized stick figure characters, and like a GUI that's just boxes with plain text. And, I feel like people aren't really putting the effort in.
Even down to like how the camera moves, or like how the systems interact. I can smell an engine off of a game when I look at it. I'm like, I can tell this is Unreal just because of how the camera moves, because they haven't changed how the default Unreal camera works. Right? There's lots of things you can do with your art style and also how your game controls to differentiate it from just being made in said engine. I'm having that battle currently with my game in Unreal Engine.
Yeah, I've been working on a game that I've been struggling to think of a good visual theming for, and I've settled on I'm going to try to make it look like Windows XP.
Oh, hell yeah. Fuck yeah, I love that aesthetic.
with all those like rounded rectangles and nice blue like
Speaking of ugly.
Yeah.
Because I think people are going to be nostalgic for it. Like I made a game for Dev Diary that was modeled after Windows 98, and I think time's moved on now.
Yeah,
I'm a sucker for that. But we talked about on the stream last week of like kind of post vaporwave, almost that like late 90s, early aughts, like early internet aesthetic. I fucking love that.
All right, I think we should go to super chats. In brief, stylization, aesthetics. They're great. More so than just having more polygons.
Yes,
we did it. We fixed video games.
There you go. That's what you need to focus on. We will regroup in a few months, video games, and see how progress is coming along. Right. Ryan Betts starts us off with $2. It says, not sure this has been answered yet, but no. We're summarizing the general attitude. Yes.
Yeah.
I want to see someone go hard to bat for graphics. Be like, unless it's top of the line, get the fuck out of here.
I've heard it. I've had these debates with people, in game dev. Like some people are really, really there for it.
Well, probably from hardware snobs. A superb owner gives $5 and says, if I can get bricked up by a pixel art snake with tits, then it's a hard no for me.
Referencing your game Starship Vagabond.
I'm not sure what bricked up means in this context.
Bricked up means big badonka-honkos.
Oh, okay.
No,
that made Jess laugh. So
no, I don't think that is. It means so horny and you can't.
Oh no, they got bricked up.
They got bricked up.
That's
I saw a pixel art snake, and I'm so.
I was thinking of the
horny.
I was thinking of the snakes. Badonka-honkos, but it's actually them getting said brick.
Yeah,
I assumed it meant bricker. I assumed it meant a specific way of getting revenge on someone by tricking them into your wine cellar, asking them to check on some Amontillado that you've bought.
So they got bricked by a pixel art snake with tits. Damn.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were real horny when they got locked in that wall.
But why is that a hard no, a superb owner?
I feel like I think they left off a can't. If I can't get bricked up by a pixel art snake with tits, then it's a hard no.
No, it's a typo. They meant to type hard on.
Then it's
It's just the no is hard de facto because they're bricked up. Like
there you go. Ryan Betts gives $2 and says, "I'm here for the chalk mukbang. Has that started?"
Oh yeah, we haven't started that yet.
The chalk and cheese mukbang.
I mean, I think you can eat chalk.
I'm sure like schools have edible chalk, right?
We were discussing this, the candy cigarettes. I think it was on Yahtzee tries, right?
Yeah, I think what Marty means is that chalk is something a child can safely eat, like the paste.
Yeah,
sure.
In a school setting.
Yeah.
And I assume so. I mean, it's just like, it's just like a powdery, it's like salt. It's like a powdery salt.
Sure.
Salt's a rock, and we eat salt.
I eat all sorts of rocks.
Fox D gives $5 and says, graphics matter for hard simulations, truck sim, stroke flight sim, stroke sports games. I want to feel like I'm on a road trip or at an NBA arena in those cases. Yeah, I agree with that. I think specifically in the area of like the hard dad game, the work sim, the appeal for that sort of thing arose when realistic graphics became a thing. So that people who used to be truck simulators, truck drivers, could play Truck Simulator and relive their glory days. And Microsoft Flight Sim has always been most appealing because of the realistic graphics.
And it feels like forever when a new console is announced, they showcase a racing game or a sports game. I feel like forever it was, here's what Gran Turismo or Project Gotham Racing or Forza is going to look like on the new hardware. And here's what LeBron James looks like now. You could see more sweat on him than you could last generation. And I think that's just because it's depicting something we all know. And so it's very clear to be like, ooh, that does look like more realistic rain on a windshield. Whereas if
and
it's
they
like,
have to have something different because those games are all the same.
because I guess
they are
that
the
is
same
like
game.
ultimately what, is throughout the years they've just become better looking.
I've
sure
been turned around. I was
sport
I was a
doesn't
big
get
no
real
on this when this statement came in. I was like, no, because when I think of Truck Simulator, I don't think, wow, that's pretty and realistic. Like, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
But it has to be realistic for the immersion.
Sure,
Yes,
because that's
in
what it's
that
going
way.
for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Susiguru 2000 gives €10 and says, "It matters to me, not just graphics, but also art direction. When the visuals are just browns and beige, I am turned off. Same for games that deliberately downgrade their graphics to the late 90s. Well,
I mean,
early 3D did look like absolute ass. I'll agree with that. But, we've been out of the browns and beige era for a while now.
But like anything, people are going to the pendulum's going to swing back, and people are going to be nostalgic of the Resi 4, Gears of War, like that era, and want a shooter that looks like that again. In the same way that people got sick of how an N64 or PS1 game looks, and now we're kind of back, and you're seeing so many indie games, Crow Country's down there, that takes that look. There's a game that just came out today called Merchant 64 that looks like an N64 game that's just been like unearthed.
But is that like good on the objective level, or is it literally just pure nostalgia driving the appeal of those games?
I feel it's another way to convey. It's like genre. We're trying to find a way to convey gameplay conventions and what the game is going for in a quick and easy way. Genre is one way of doing that, but now I think we're getting into the era of what kind of game Crow Country is just from looking at it. Like you don't need to hear its genre or like play it. I just know what it is. And
you can see a screenshot of a game, and if it kind of looks like Chrono Trigger, you kind of know what kind of a game it's going to be.
Yeah, like Sea of Stars, you know what it's going to do. Right?
Yeah.
I suppose so. Dr. Theo gives $5. Says, when it comes to purposely downgrading graphics, horror games tend to do it the most. Maybe nostalgia or using your imagination to fill the gaps in. Yeah, one of the reasons why AAA hasn't been very good at doing horror games lately is that AAA is now all about putting the money on screen, and horror games are most effective if things are left to your imagination. I would say.
Yeah. It's also it feels like the horror that's really blown up. You know, you get your Resis that sell well, your Silent Hills that sell well, but it feels like the safest bet for horror is in the lower budget. Like those are the games especially if you're gearing it towards like people who are, either early adopters to horror because of something like Five Nights at Freddy's, or hardcore horror fan. Like horror movies have been kind of low budget, grindhousey since the start.
Yeah,
and so I think horror fans can put up with a lot of
because subtlety works in horror, not any of this Silent Hill 2 remake monsters smashing down walls to get at you.
Sure, and we don't have a lot of $200-300 million horror movies, right? You don't have a lot of
Also. Limitation breeds innovation, right? Like if you have a smaller team with like a smaller budget making a horror game, you have to try and think of ways, one, to stand out in the genre because it's very saturated, the indie horror scene, and also think of new ways to how are we going to portray our monster? How are we, as Yahtzee was saying, not going to portray our monster and build suspense and like actually leave it up to their imaginations? It's difficult.
Also, horror is a pretty easy thing to just bring across really quickly in just in contrast to something like an epic story where we have to get invested in the characterizations. A horror game, you can just be, bam, in an abandoned house trying to escape, and instantly all the feelings are being portrayed. In fucking, you can make a game about passing through a subway tunnel that repeats over and over again, and it instantly feels like a horror game.
I saw the trailer for the movie for Exit 8 that's coming out this summer.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah. Huh. It's got to be a low-budget movie. Stuck in the same goddamn looping tunnel.
800 million, most expensive movie ever made.
Oh, yeah, you just wonder how much meat you can get out of that.
Yeah.
Geldon Yetic gives $10 and says, what do you get when you keep upgrading GPUs? Game Engine, a neural network that's trained to hallucinate you're playing Doom. Look at what you've done, PC Master Race. Cue prequel Vader. No.
That was a whole little skit.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing is that people buy.
That was a tight 5.
That was a Titan 5. Is people spend a shit ton of money either upgrading a console or getting a new graphics card, and they kind of want something that that allows them to feel good about that, right? That allows them to be like, oh, this is the reason I did this, is because X, Y, and Z look this good, and it wouldn't look that good if other people, if I didn't have this.
I bought a stupid fucking wider than the sun 32:9 curved monitor, and I'm like, I want to play games that are in ultra wide so I can utilize this. It happens.
You're gonna get a neck cramp by just going back and forth.
Yeah.
I can't move my neck anymore. I just swivel my chair.
Like Batman in the first Michael Keaton
Yeah,
movie.
but not as much money, and I don't have a butler, so kind of worse.
Other than that, exactly like Batman.
Yeah. Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, got a friend who won't play Undertale because of pixels. Argues $1,000 graphics cards should be used to fullest potential, not squandered for nostalgia. Well, fuck them, Alex Armstrong.
Fuck off.
I mean, is that also like, do they convey that over to movies? Will they not like watch a movie that was made in under like $50 million?
I have friends who will do that. I've had raging arguments with people. Someone who was studying film at college with me was like, refused to watch films that didn't come out after the 2000s because they said they looked bad. Just fuck off.
Well, it's their fucking loss, I'd say.
Yeah.
It is, but also fuck them.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Just, live well is the best revenge.
True.
Corvus Vocatio, member for 6 months in tip jar. Thank you very much. And then a sequence of characters probably produced from randomly smashing a keyboard gives €2 and says, first super chat, love the content, gameplay better than graphics. Thanks for contributing,
It's not random. It's the middle row all the way across, left to right.
Oh, so it is.
Yeah.
And then some random numbers.
Then the random numbers, yeah.
Hawk Abridging gives $4.99 and says, the pursuit of realistic graphics has led to most AAA games becoming bland and generic in design. Games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom stand out because they're stylized. Yes. That's what
I think they stand out because of their gameplay pushes. I don't think when I think of like Breath of the Wild, I'm like, this was great visually.
But as we said, that can go together, like having stylized look rather than overly detailed stuff where it's not obvious what you can do. I think what sets Breath of the Wild apart from what was it called? Phoenix Rising.
Oh, yeah.
Was that in Breath of the Wild, you'd climb to the top of a tower and look throughout and you'd like scan the scenery and you'd know where to go to because you could see things. You'd see like a temple, you'd see a building you could go to. Whereas in Phoenix Rising, which was aping Breath of the Wild, you'd scan the horizon and then like icons would just appear on a seemingly empty bit of land.
Yeah. And it's like, well, no, I want to see like, a little wisp of smoke rising and get curious.
Yeah.
Or, the river kind of goes into a cave there. I want to go there. So
the limitations of the Switch kind of bred that, right? Like limitations breed innovation. They couldn't make the game pretty, so they had to impress in other areas.
The game is pretty. What do you? That is
no. They couldn't make it like fucking like crazy. The draw distance in that game is
Horizon,
gross.
Which came out like the same day or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, fuck Horizon. Like that game is pretty. I'm not trying to say it's not pretty. I'm trying to say, they had to utilize what they had in a creative way because the Switch runs like ass, right?
Yeah. And the fact that they're a first party means that they have intimate knowledge with the hardware.
Yeah. They did a great job. Love those games.
Good job, Miyamoto.
Captain President gives $5 and says, for visuals, hand-drawn and watercolor are where it's at. I mean, if you're going for that sort of look, I suppose, if you're going for the artsy-fartsy, we got Rihanna Pratchett to write the story sort of indie game vibes.
Yeah. I guess
remember when we were playing Split Fiction, there was just that one bonus level where they were like hand-drawn on a sketch pad?
Yeah.
And we just sort of took the piss out of it.
Yeah.
Look who wants to be Gree.
It's one of the things that I'm doing in my personal project is my game is hand painted. So
yeah, you solicited my opinion on a screenshot a while back.
Yeah, It's tough to do. I fixed the
like
moving though, Yachts. I want to show you. I fixed the moving.
Those
Okay.
tend to age better. I mean, when we look at games from like the late 90s, early aughts that have aged really well visually, like people point to the stylish and cel shaded ones, you know, your Jet Set Radio or Okami or Wind Waker. Like I think Wind Waker has aged visually better than Twilight Princess has.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Corvus Vocatio gives $5. Says, I'd say graphics help, but shouldn't be the focus because that takes more money, time, and effort from gameplay or story. Realistic graphics more so.
Yeah, the issue there is just like I mentioned in one of my UI videos, is that having twice the amount of gameplay systems or better UI or whatever doesn't sell copies, right? It doesn't like it. You can't put that on the back of the box. But you can put multiple screenshots of your pretty game on the back of the box because, you know, a lot of people just care about that. So that's why a lot of money's funneled towards it.
You know, the other thing about the stylization of Wind Waker over Twilight Princess is that Link in Wind Waker actually feels like a character with personality. Whereas in basically every other Zelda game, especially the realistic ones, Link is just, you know, bland surprise.
I only think of Link's face moving in Twilight Princess. Like, his reactions were always just like, and then he'd go back to default. Like, it's just.
But in Wind Waker,
the animations weren't great.
He's got an angry eyes every time he gets his swords out. His like eyes flit around the scene to like take everything in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's capable of smiling.
And look what happened at the time. A bunch of the internet and tore it apart because that wasn't what they wanted.
Well, they were idiots.
They were idiots.
People shat on Silent Hill 2 when it first came out because it wasn't considering the plot of Silent Hill 1. And those people shut up pretty quick.
They're also idiots. They're all idiots.
Corvus Vocatio, following on from the last super chat, gives $5. Says, for example, Red Dead Redemption 2, Skyrim, or Battlefield 1 aged well, but something like Wind Waker still looks fantastic as the art style. Did Skyrim age well? I don't know if Skyrim aged well.
I think Skyrim landed well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also hard to tell because they've continually gone back and tinkered with Skyrim, right? Like, Skyrim came out for the 360, and then they released like a zhooshed up Xbox One version, and like, I think you're thinking of what Skyrim looks like now compared to, I guess, what Skyrim looked like
mods,
in 2011.
right? Like, you can make that game look stunning with mods.
I know, and how can one say RDR2 aged well? I wouldn't say that game has aged much at all, period. Certainly that was certainly like past the plateauing of realistic graphics.
Yeah, I think that
getting close to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, even so, plateau, as we say.
In the 90s, a 5-year span looked like night and day, whereas now, 5 years ago was The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima, and like, I don't know, those games still look great.
Yeah.
Saber Lily gives $9.99 and says, I think realistic graphics are really only worth it on racing games like Forza and Gran Turismo, where part of the appeal or draw is how good the cars and tracks look.
Room.
Isn't it true, though, that a lot of like racing games where they've got like sponsored, like actual real world car brands and stuff, they can't depict the cars getting smashed up too much?
I remember that was a thing. I don't know if it's still a thing, but yeah, that was definitely a like burnout. Like, you could never do a burnout game with real car brands because like Mercedes doesn't want their people to play a game with their cars
Only
fucking
certain
explode.
ones.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Like, visually, something that does impress me is those videos of what's that like ultra realistic driving game where the cars get ultra realistically smashed up. And it wasn't Assetto Corsa, whatever it's called. You know, there's a lot of like YouTube compilation videos of let's see what happens if we launch this array of vehicles off this particular ramp and off a cliff.
That's it's Big Race Fun Time Fuck Maximum.
Oh, someone will know.
Oh, iRacing it might be.
I think that might be it. Yeah.
Thanks, Evil Engine.
Just ultra realistic, like damage physics on the cars, and it's quite hypnotic to watch. Shit! Lost my play. Longshanks, £10 to say, as long as the game had good anti-aliasing, I'm really not that picky. I've been playing Atomfall recently and love it to bits, but my god, the aliasing is really bad, even at the best possible settings. Yeah, I've certainly been noticing the space ants ever since Ross Scott pointed it out in one of his game dungeons.
Space ants?
What's that?
Yeah. Well, if you've got like something like a chain link fence in the distance, And as you move closer to it, if there isn't like good smooth anti-aliasing, you get this weird sort of
shimmering. Yeah,
the space ants effect. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, it's also some of that comes from like I don't know how many people worked on Atomfall, but like I imagine Rebellion is like a relatively small team compared to Bethesda or the something of the ilk.
Rebellion's been around since 1991. Did you know that?
I didn't know that they were that old. No.
I mean, I've been writing my review of Atomfall, and I guess my opening statement is, what the fuck gives you the right to stick around this long, assholes?
Yeah, when so many others died on the wayside?
Yes. Why did fucking Tango Gameworks get shut down, and the developers of fucking Shell Shock 2 Blood Trails are still around?
Damn.
Alex Armstrong is $2, says, at least 2025 looks better than early polygonal 3D. Well, fair enough, but I'm still of the view that we could have stopped at the PS2 and lost nothing in terms of visual innovation.
I don't know. I like early polygonal stuff.
So do I.
It's so jank that you have to like interpret what they were trying to do. And part of that I find really fun.
I played through this short survival horror RPG for the PS1 for the first time over the weekend called Kudelka, and it was like a 4-disc game because so much of it is like kind of like fully voiced cutscenes, and the combat's junk. But the story, the fucking atmosphere, and like the pre-rendered backgrounds, and then the performances were the things that blew me away because it was one of the only games of that era where it was theatrical actors and all the performances were filmed with everyone in the same room at the same time. So it's not just like two disparate performances being matched up against each other. It's people literally reacting to each other. I was really impressed by it. Shouts to Kudelka. Cool.
Well, speaking of people reacting to each other, Peter Parker SL gives $20 and says, I could be wrong, but the last time I remember a game aiming to be as realistic as possible, we got L.A. Noire, and that had a really uncanny valley feel to it. I'd rather have a game look good or artistic over realistic. The problem with L.A. Noire is that they put all the effort into the facial motion capture animation and none into like skeletal body animation. Yeah. So you ended up with this effect that looked like ultra realistic footage of faces projected onto little wooden puppet bodies.
Yeah. But I did like what it was going for, and I would like to see them try. I like the idea of an investigation game where you literally have to see visual tics and if a person's nervous or perspiring. Or
the problem with that was that the question of is this character lying was always yes, because they're acting. So in order to like actually convey the fact that the character's lying, they had to act really badly.
Oh, really over the top, yeah.
Yeah, and it was hard to tell like what was like actual deliberate bad acting and what was just, bad acting, because these are just, random B-movie actors.
Yeah.
Lastimosas gives 125 somethings. I forget what that
Filipino
is. Thank you. Can't understand and play base Dwarf Fortress. Simple graphic Steam upgrade, and suddenly it's my favorite game. Well, that's true, but base Dwarf Fortress is completely incomprehensible.
That's part of the I find playing original Dwarf Fortress like staring into the Matrix.
Yeah,
you got to understand what all the fucking symbols mean.
It's like trying to understand a magic eye painting when you don't know how to do magic eye paintings.
Can't unfocus your eyes.
Yeah. Blistered Soul gives $1.99. Says we need N64, GameCube, Poly Indies, more Cruelty Squad.
We're getting a lot of those. I mean, I don't think that's not something we're at a loss for, and I don't think people have to stop. I
think there's virtue in like a consistent visual stylization. I think that's something that wasn't really present in N64 era graphics.
So it's important to consider that a lot of the games you're playing in the modern era are low poly. It's just texturing technology has got so fucking good that you can't tell that that's just one plane.
Hjorth87 gives 20 Danish kroner and says, like 13's style, XIII, fits well with the comic origin.
Yeah, I remember that one. David Duchovny did the voice in that game.
I know. He did quite a few game voices back in the day. He also was a voice in Area 51, if you remember that.
I forgot. The one that wasn't the light gun one?
I forgot that game existed.
Because did they make like a first-person shooter based out of the light game?
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
There's also some very bad X-Files games. some
Yes,
X-Files, like
yes,
FFV games that are real bad.
multiple.
Yeah.
But there was like an FFV game. There was like a Resident Evil knockoff
Yeah.
that had the original voice actors, but Gillian Anderson just can't do voice acting. I don't know why. It's a different skill set, isn't it?
Different skill set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she was good in. She's one of the main voices in Princess Mononoke.
Oh, really? Well, she wasn't bringing her A
For the
game
US.
for the X-Files game.
I think she just didn't give a shit for the game. I think at that point people are like, "Wow, this is for fucking kids."
Also,
Who
the
cares?"
scale of voice acting in games is really different to voice acting in a movie, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the times you
I-
don't have visual confirmation of what you're seeing or like what's coming before and after, so the tone can be
guess.
completely off.
And I guess you want to bring your A game from Hayao Miyazaki. You don't need to bring your A game for whoever the fuck made X-Files Fight the Future for the PS1.
Well, you know,
It was Rebellion, right? They made
It was
it.
probably Rebellion, yeah.
yeah. Well, you know, Princess Mononoke, that would have been an English dub, wouldn't it? Because the original would have been
And
Japanese.
that was,
like,
I think that was,
The Ghibli dubs are great though. They're really good.
animation usually like takes the voice acting first and then does animation to the voice acting, and obviously you can't do that in a dub. Witticism gives $5 and says, "What are your thoughts on poor optimization? Seems like we missed the point of graphics when good-looking games still run like crap on beefy GPUs."
yeah, I always feel bad that's people, that seems to be like a recurring problem with multi-platform games and their PC releases, right? Especially a lot of Japanese games, I think, have shot, but even like certain like Sony ports have shot it. Weren't people having trouble with Monster Hunter when it hit PC first? I feel like every big game that comes out, I guess just the fact that you're not developing for a uniform thing like an Xbox or a PlayStation.
The
You're developing for a
spectrum
million
of hardware for PC is fucked. It's horrible.
Well, it was even worse before every PC was either Nvidia or the other one.
AMD.
Pretty much everyone's got like a GeForce GTX these days.
Mm-hmm.
Morberticus gives €5. Says, "Realistic graphics don't always service art direction, but how important are high-end GPUs for artistic freedom?" Not terribly. Like I said before, like artistically speaking, the PS2 was probably the point where you could realize pretty much any artistic vision without the massive barrier to entry of the overly realistic graphics.
You have the skill to do
That's
it.
why there was so much creativity on the PS2 era. That's when we got Okami and Shadow of the Colossus and Beautiful Joe and Katamari Damacy and all of that was released like
Kissing Simulator.
Julep. And all of that could just be on the same shelf as the AAA stuff, like side by side.
Mm-hmm. Good times.
The True Mandalorian, member for 14 months in tip jar. And then Nidorom gives $50. It's a magenta super chat.
Fuck yeah.
And says, "Horizon Forbidden West remains the best looking game to date I've seen as far as realistic graphics, but the best looking graphics in the industry couldn't save it from feeling like an over bloated slog, which perfectly captures the importance of graphical fidelity."
Oh, amazing.
I completely agree. I keep seeing, people will show there's like a specific boss fight against like a giant crab tank or something that's on like a beach, and I'm like, this is the fucking best looking thing I've ever seen. And then I remember I played the game for 5 hours and was very bored. And
Again, it was because Forbidden West was again like the Ubisoft model. All I was focusing on was the GUI elements.
Yeah. I love a GUI element.
I like a GUI element. Am I right, boys?
Boy.
Bricked up.
King Dead 42 gives $5. Says, "I now want a slow and soulful remake of Gonna Make You Sweat, Everybody Dance Now by CNC Music Factory." I think it was Jonathan Coulton who did like a slow acoustic rendition of Baby Got Back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, "I like big butts and I cannot lie. You are the brothers, can't deny," etc.
You guys should listen to Richard Cheese. He does a great...
Lounge Against the Machine.
Yeah, he does great like lounge. Yeah, he's a parody lounge singer who does like covers of really famous like heavy songs, but in a lounge style.
Down with the Sickness, which was featured in Zack Snyder and James Gunn's Dawn of the Dead remake. Movies.
The book ahead is Uncle Height gives €5. It says, did you guys hear of Dream BBQ? It's a weird immersive game with interesting visuals and dialogues. Came out last week. Takes roughly an hour to beat. I think someone recommended it to me the other day.
Yeah, it's very much in the same vein, I think, as LSD Dream Emulator, which was like a famous PS1 game that's kind of just like
so is it
vibing in weird spaces.
Is it actually just saying something, or is it just rando stuff?
I don't know. I haven't. I bought it, but I haven't played it yet.
A comparison for me is the Beginner's Guide, which is also rando stuff, but it's also making a point and
saying something.
It is about something. Yes.
I'll jump into the deep end tonight, and I'll come back whether it's worth your hour or not.
Okay. I mean, it can't be this week's Yahtzee Tries because we've got something lined up.
We do have something lined up, and let me tell you,
it's
good. It's Croc.
Yeah.
2 hours of Croc.
Yeah. Legend of the Gobbos.
It's coming back. It just there's a remaster.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to play it, but I know.
Well, if you have a gap in Fully Ramblematic, I think people would really appreciate a Croc review.
Yeah,
call it Croc shit if you don't like it.
Well, I was about to say that would be just a little bit too obvious, wouldn't it?
Croc.
Fox D gives $5. Says, I would pay good money for a slow, soulful Sarah McLachlan cover of "Screaming Eagles" by Sabaton or "Thunderstruck" by AC/DC.
With sad pictures of like dogs that need a good home in the background.
Tsunami Dusha gives $20 and says nothing. Yeah, just going to gloss over it this time.
Thanks, Tsunami Dusha.
And then Captain President gives another $20 and says, Marty, do you remember the trick to remember how many Tamagotchis are in a month?
Wait a minute. First off, you're combining separate goofs.
Okay.
Well, the Tamagotchi thing is during last week's Nintendo Direct, the presenter kept calling them Tamagotchis. And I was like, isn't it just Tamagotchis? But like apparently it is Tamagotchis. Everyone's just been saying it wrong forever. I mean, in an official Nintendo presentation, the presenter said it several times, so I imagine it's right.
I'd have thought it would be Tamagotchi because it's just like a single O, isn't it? In the English spelling. And usually in Japanese, you don't like diphthong it unless there's two vowels.
I love diphthonging though. But is this also a reference to the fact that I do not know how many days are in the months, which is still true? No, I haven't. The thing hasn't stuck with me. I know this month has 31 because today is the 31st. So
I'll do you one better. I don't fucking know the months that's in order fully.
That's not great.
Do you know the Knuckles thing?
No, you tried to teach me the Knuckles thing, but then I started thinking about Sonic the Hedgehog.
January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, and every space between the Knuckles is a month that doesn't have 31 days. So every knuckle is a month with 31 days.
Who decided that?
Who decided what?
It's the fucking Gregorian calendar, mate. So the ancient Romans, I guess.
Fucking Gregorian ruining our months.
That fucker.
Why don't we just make them all 30 days?
Well, I can tell you that July and August are both named after Roman emperors who wanted to have months named after them, and that's why October, September, November, and December are all named after the numbers that are the wrong numbers.
Dude, this sucks. It's like when you play a game and then something shit happens and you're like, why did this happen? And a fan goes, well, that's because it needed to happen for the narrative. Motherfucker, you write the narrative. The game devs write the narrative. Just fucking change it.
Yeah.
You know what? By the end of this year, Jay, you should learn the months and I'll learn the days. We'll better ourselves as people.
All right.
You seriously don't know the months in order?
I know, because I have this conversation a lot. I was never taught it at school. So I vaguely know it, but I'm like, fuck it.
I don't remember being...
Tomorrow is a month.
I don't remember being taught the months in school. I just fucking know, because it's part of everyday life.
Well, okay, Yahtzee, I wasn't fucking born with that knowledge then. When you get to July and June, I start to get fuzzy. I'm like,
January, February,
and then August.
Next, you'll be telling me you don't know the order of the QWERTY keyboard off by heart.
I don't know. I don't think with a blank keyboard I could do it.
Q W E R T Y U I O P A S D F G H J K L Z X E V B N M. Next, you'll be telling me you haven't memorized all the positions of the American states either.
Why don't you make a video
It's
about
actually impressive, Yahtzee, how you get so much work done with finding time to have this much useless fucking
it?
information.
He got a
in
big
your
brain. He don't know what to do with it.
He clearly does.
Yes, I'm clearly a very intelligent man who does
He's
the
a
crossword
savant.
for fun.
I'm still amazed you don't know the months. Like you've
I
let
know.
me
Okay, I
gobsmacked
think
and
I'm
an idiot.
exaggerating how much it's like a couple I sometimes mix up. I do know the
Okay,
months.
list them off now.
Do you know how many fucking super chats we have? Like, let's move on from this month of goof.
We'll just do it quickly, and then we can move on.
January, February, March, April, March, June,
No,
July.
you were right.
You're in March right now. Tomorrow's April.
You missed.
Wait, no, tomorrow's April? Is it March,
You
April?
have broken
Yes.
me. You have broken me.
March,
And
April, June,
No, you forgot
Jul-
May.
May, June, July, August, September,
Yes. Okay.
October,
Now we get to
November,
the-
December. See,
Yes,
I'm getting
there
to
we
this
go.
fuzzy area where I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's coming next.
You need some more
I've never
graphics.
needed
That's what
it.
you need.
Man. Well, remember Jason. Remember if you look at the first initials of each month, then Jason is in the middle of them.
Jason.
Yeah. It's like
I see.
JFJFMAMJ Jason.
I get into this fuzzy
December.
area and then I just go, what month is it? And then someone says, and I go, okay. And then I move on.
Okay. Okay.
Is this
Can
a
you
bit?
list?
No, it's not a
Can you-
fucking bit. I have really bad dyslexia. I like.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay. For our next trick, can you list the planets from closest to the sun to furthest?
Mercury is the first one closest to the sun, right?
Yes.
And then, hey, there we go. Then it's Venus.
You're just reading them off. He's reading it off.
It's,
Doesn't count.
Mars,
Oh,
Jupiter,
okay.
Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune.
Minus.
Yeah.
And Pluto.
I don't like the fact that Pluto's not on that visual.
All right, and then the Kuiper belt. Garfield 2326 gives $5. It says, while I'm kind of sad the high-end graphics don't really wow me anymore, my wallet is very happy I don't have to keep upgrading my PC to keep up. Yeah, I mean, you could scrum yourself stupid with video games for the rest of your life and never run out at this point. So why worry about missing out, I suppose?
Yeah.
Alex Armstrong gives $2. It says, thoughts on visual shifts on the fly in gameplay?
In what way?
Like if for
they
artistic
adjust themselves?
purposes? Like for artistic purposes? Like how Killer 7 has a different art style from chapter to chapter?
Sure. I think it's cool if used for a reason, or like if it feels like it's enhancing the tone. Like there was that, I think Evoland, there was like a top-down action RPG where as you would progress, you'd kind of evolve through the generations of visuals of games. So it'd start off like very simplistic, like top-down 2-color kind of thing, and then evolve to 8-bit, and then evolve to 16-bit. Yeah, but I like how like What Remains of Edith Finch had like a different kind of visual tone for every short story you entered.
Yeah, it's
I think
cool.
It works
Yes,
works good for a game like that.
Yeah, it emphasizes the anthology nature of the game.
Mhm.
Evil Legend number 9 gives $2. It says background Ludo fee,
Ludo, get up.
because we saw Ludo in the background for a second.
Well, how about foreground Ludo fee?
Damn.
Oh,
Get your bucks in.
she's so tolerant.
She was asleep and now
Doctor-
she's just fallen back asleep on me.
The local of Innsmouth gives $5. Says, Jamate, you talked about Gundam sets a while back that were mechanical and didn't require glue. What are they, and why can't I find them?
All good, like all Gundam sets don't require glue. Like that's the
Okay.
thing. That's
Yeah, isn't that
that's what they
Gunpla is
are.
all snappy, right? Isn't that the
Yeah, they all
Gunpla.
snap together. Like all Gundam
Gun-
kits don't
so-
require glue.
So Gunpla is the word he should be searching for.
Yeah,
Gunpla.
Gunpla kits. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Theo gives $5. Says, fun fact, there are more polygons on Lady Dimitrescu's ass than the entirety of the original Resident Evil. I believe that.
I don't. I don't.
That's one of
believe
those. That's one of those fun facts that's like Cleopatra lived closer to the present day than she did to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Cheops.
Oh, I don't like that.
That's
I don't like
grim.
that one bit.
I think that's a fun fact.
Isn't it like a JPEG of a screenshot of the original Super Mario Brothers is a bigger file than Super Mario Brothers?
Yeah, it takes up more
That's
bytes.
awesome.
Like a modern Microsoft Word document in which you wrote like a single sentence about Mario Brothers is now a larger file size than the original Mario Brothers. Cry gives $2 and says, art thrives on limitations. Nicholas Meyer. I agree. I think that's why so many open world Jiminy Cockthroat games sort of play the same. Because once you can do anything, people tend to sort of gravitate towards a central point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how that happens.
One of them does really well, and then other people want that.
I suppose. But it just feels like everything sort of gravitates towards a central point of arsing about in a bush.
Bush arsing.
Yeah.
Bush arsing.
Alex Armstrong gives $2. Says, hope you guys survive the immature internet tomorrow. What's that all about?
What's happening
April
tomorrow?
1st. God damn it. What is wrong with both of you?
April 1st. Yeah. No,
I've
I knew
passed
it was
on my month knowledge to I've
It's like
infected you guys.
It follows fucking curse.
Yeah.
I knew it was April tomorrow. I forgot it was April 1st. Yeah.
I want
Fucking
something as
April
good
1st.
as I mean, not like it was the best game, but I loved the surprise of Sonic Murder Simulator, whatever that game was called.
Yeah. I remember reviewing it. I wish it had leaned into it and actually murdered him.
R.I.P.
Miss Harmony gives $1.99 and says, happy Trans Day of Visibility, everyone.
Hey.
Is
Indeed, Miss
that
Harmony.
is that the day before April Fool's for a reason?
No, probably just the end of March. There's a lot of days. You got to find one. I don't know if it
suppose.
directly connotes or points to a specific moment.
Phoenix 10 gives 35 GTQs. I don't think we've ever had GTQs. Is that our first GTQ?
No
I think
idea.
so.
Game's done
It
quick.
says game's ton quick.
Guatemalan
God.
Quetzals. Like the Quetzalcoatl. The Thunderbird.
Oh my god, the
I-
snakes.
Well, how nice. As the late, great Iwata predicted, we've reached the limit of graphics, instead now needing other ways to differentiate. Keep up the great work. Heart emoji.
I think, or is it Moore's law that technology always doubles every year? I can't remember the exact
Yeah, I don't know if that's still
but
the
it's
case.
we're still seeing it, as in from a technological standpoint. We're just not able to see it, right? Games
Yes.
can run twice as good as they did last year, but we're not able to actually see that difference with our eyes. So
Yeah, because so it comes a point where what's the point? Like be able to like play a movie at like 200 frames per second. That which is like more than the human eyeball can detect.
yeah.
Longshanks gives £10 and says, I think realistic graphics have actually peaked this console generation and Sony will struggle to justify the PS6. The PS5 Pro got mocked a lot already during its announcement.
I mean, I don't think it'll be hard for them to justify. They'll be like, well, The Last of Us 3 is coming to this thing. Spider-Man 3 is coming to this thing. And people will buy it in a few years.
Yeah.
So I think they'll be fine.
Gives $2 and says, is your Split Fiction gameplay available for a VOD? No, we didn't. We weren't streaming it. We literally just wanted to play it so that I could review it.
No gameplay. Just picture two old men bickering.
Yeah. Although,
Chalk
and
and
me
cheese
saying,
couple.
and just me saying chalk and cheese after every single line of dialogue.
A lot of chalk and cheese. A lot of chalk and cheese.
Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, I want more games like Viewfinder and Superliminal that utilize graphics as gameplay mechanics, but with an actual story than just look what tech can do. Yeah, I remember being impressed by those games, but it was sort of a one-game concept, isn't it? Like, everyone was really impressed by Superliminal when they first saw the video of it, but then it came out and we played it, and then we were like, well, that's the limit of what you can do with that.
Superliminal.
They make really good demos and rarely can sort of contain an entire experience like that. Same thing with like that game Maquette.
It's like the time travel level in Timefall 2. It's like, wow, this was a really nice
it's great for a level, and I'm
experience.
glad it's not like the entire mechanic of the game. Yeah,
Over a game, it would be too much.
yeah. Viewfinder was a great example of that. Superliminal. Yeah.
Sosiguru 2000 gives €2. It says, honestly, Skyrim looked old on release.
No, it didn't.
That's what I'm saying.
2011? I don't think so.
For me, it was
good
more
in
like
2011.
For me, it was more like the interaction between elements, like the way characters animated and the way they kept clipping into the floor. That sort of let down the look of the game.
For me, what impressed me was the scale. Like, I think it was the first time I played a game back then that it was such a vast scale, and I was like, wow, I can go there, I can do these things.
Yeah, I'm just saying at the
rather
time,
than this is free.
I remember saying at the time, it's the kind of game that looks really good at a distance, but then you look closely at the people like fading into doors as they walk into buildings, and suddenly it doesn't look so great.
Mm-hmm.
Fox D gives $10 and says, we reached the limit of human eyesight to resolve images, so now we need to shift to refining at that maximum. As tech gets cheaper, indie and AA devs will make what's limited to AAA budgets in 2025. You say that, but they'll probably have to buy a lot of textures to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, there's a point where, maybe like the current level of AAA tech would be available to indie developers in like 10 years' time, but they still have to make all the textures and make all the animations and render all the lighting and all of that shit.
That's the expensive part.
Yeah.
Oh,
Alex Armstrong is 5.
Oh, we also skipped one a couple ago. Magician Man, the 4 Longshanks.
Oh, yes. Magician Man gives $5 and says, graphics are just the tool. What actually matters is art direction. You only want enough graphics as needed to bring an artistic vision to life.
I do agree that art direction and kind of knowledge of the hardware can, you look at like what Monolith can do on a Switch with an open world game like Xenoblade Chronicles.
And who the fuck wants to see every pore on a character's face?
That was like when, remember when like cameras switched to HD for like award shows and people are like, oh, we need to like change how we do like makeup and everything for these cameras because, they're seeing all of our imperfections now.
Yeah.
Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, Yahtzee, didn't you once say graphics cards should be used to push certain technical limits like what that Doom Nuts mod did or the Dead Rising games? My point was that if you want to impress with hardware, you can't really just make things more realistic now, but you could just do stuff like render a game with like 500 enemies in it at the same time.
It's the
or do
Astrobot
really, really impressive water physics. Or just, something that would actually be impressive.
What is this Doom mod?
Well, there's a Doom mod called Nuts, which was basically just 100,000 enemies in one room. When it first came out, it was like just this joke mod that would instantly brick your PC. But now, like, computers will actually run it, so people like speedrun it and shit.
Nice.
Moorink75 gives $10 Canadian and says 07. Oh, it's the salute thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ryan Betts gives $2 and says the Last of Us 2 remastered comparison vids are hilarious.
Yeah, those were funny one.
Yeah, they both look exactly the bloody same.
I like legitimately could not tell the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Not like squinting.
That's what the PS5 Pro is like trying to do. Is like, we're not trying to make the game prettier, we're trying to make it run better. Like, we want you to be able to play in the graphical fidelity setting while at 60 FPS. That's what
you don't have to choose 4K or 60. You can have both.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't have so much graphical fidelity in the first place. It wouldn't have been an issue, would it?
Oh, he's got him.
Whoa, fucking done.
A superb owner, member for 16 months in tip jar, and then follows it up with a super chat to the tune of $5 and says, I think humanity and Astrobot had a good philosophy. Keep the graphics simplistic and then use the extra power generating thousands of interactive objects. Yeah, I noticed that. There was an awful lot of just random bits of Astrobot where they just flood the floor with physics objects. There's like a million little gems.
Yeah, you get to like a pyramid and there's just a shit ton of gems. I'm like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah. There you go. Nidorom gives $50. Deep red super chat. Thanks, Nidorom. And says, I've noticed that I have been watching more Second Wind content than any of the streaming services I use, so I will be upping my Patreon to the Phoenix tier. You guys have been great to listen to and follow. Keep up the great work. That's a very good attitude, Nidorom. And perhaps the rest of you could all learn something from Nidorom. If you're thinking to yourself, hey, I enjoy all this free entertainment from Second Wind. That's not fair. I'm taking money out of the mouths of their adorable dogs and children. I should join the Patreon.
Let me get my adorable dog.
That is exactly what you should be thinking. Thanks,
remember,
Nidorom. You're
at
one
that
of the
$50
good
tier,
ones.
you can join us for our monthly movie shenanigans. Last week we did Donnie Darko, which was a joy, and we're also making some changes to some of our tiers, including the $5 tier. That's where ad free is going to be now.
Yeah.
So going forward, $5 is going to be the ad free tier, and we got some special things planned for
So
for the $10 tier.
if you can at least pony up a measly $5, no more ads on our videos
And
if you don't want them.
Also, we've neglected to mention our Patreon exclusive experimental videos, and we have everyone on staff has some interesting shit cooking right now. You don't want to miss it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's already an interesting Kingdom Hearts lore dump video that's currently a Patreon exclusive.
Yeah,
It's good.
love it.
That's where I literally just sit and read out and take the piss out of the story of the Kingdom Hearts games.
But it's a really serious series, so you shouldn't make fun of it.
Impy gives €5 and says, I get nostalgic cravings to play PSX/N64 style indie games, even though I wasn't around for that era of gaming and never owned any of those consoles.
I think that's normal.
I think it is possible to have nostalgia for the previous generation's nostalgia.
Sure. I mean, I think it's almost the equivalent of like people who are like obsessed with World War II or like Roman history or the counterculture movement of like the 60s and 70s. Like, I
get it.
I always say like each era of culture is like nostalgic for the era sort of exactly 20 years previously. But there's also cases of like double jumps. If you look at Mad Men, which came out in the 60s, well, it came out in the 2000s, but was set in the 60s. That's because it was actually nostalgic for 80s nostalgia for the 60s.
Yeah, which we're now getting a lot of. There's so much like Amblin nostalgia of like that 80s Spielberg generation because it's the people who grew up nostalgic for it are now still pressing that nostalgia instead of kind of creating their own new nostalgia.
Yeah. BS Marsh gives $5 and says, Marty, I was just about to mention Princess Mononoke and Gillian Anderson. She was good in that. The FMV X-File games, not so much.
Yeah, those were bad. That was just at the top of my mind because I saw Princess Mononoke in theaters recently, the dub.